Hello and welcome to episode 55 of Coffee Break Blogging, and we are continuing on our series here where we're talking about the platform and how to set up our blog in the right way. And this all fits within the bigger picture that we're doing here on Coffee Break Blogging of building up a real information business based around our blog that is generating revenue and you can live the life that you want. All based around your blog, and yes, it certainly is possible. So let's go ahead and get started with this. Today we're going to be talking about how to flow attention via your blog's design. Now, the very title of this episode, I want to explain what this means. What do I mean by flowing attention? So here's the thing. Attention is actually a very valuable commodity these days. It's actually a scarce resource. And perhaps you've experienced that for yourself, where it's really hard to pay attention to something for a long period of time. And there's a lot of things out there that are competing for your attention simultaneously. Now, all of your readers, when they arrive on your blog, are in the exact same predicament. Now, because of that, you have basically just a few seconds to grab their attention and guide it to something where they see, well, okay, well, that must be valuable to me, and they actually spend some more additional time on the site. You've literally got just a few seconds to pull that off. If you don't do it, they're probably going to hit the back button and take off. So here's what I mean. Attention, really what it is, and this will help you really envision what we're talking about, is to view attention as a form of energy. And if it helps, you can actually almost look at it as like a flow of water, so to speak. So for example, if you see water and you'll see how water will flow, it will generally take the path of least resistance. It's going to generally flow downhill, but it can be guided in certain ways. Energy is very much the same thing. If you see people, let's for example, they have an audio speaker, and that speaker is pointed at a particular way, and the speaker can be designed in such a way to funnel the sound in a particular direction. So that would be an example of funneling energy in a certain way. Now, your reader's attention, and attention in general, is also a form of energy, and people, when they pull up your blog on their screen and their eyeballs are pointed at it, they're flowing energy. They're expending energy from themselves and they're looking at your blog. Now, what is your blog going to do to funnel it to the right places? So that is what we're going to be looking at here, because the attention is going to arrive on the site. It's going to generally land in a certain place. There's always going to be that first thing that's generally going to grab the eye of the person who arrives. Now, if you go to a homepage, usually there's going to be a visual element on that homepage, a big photo or something like that. And very often that will be the first thing that they will see. And so that will be the landing point for this flow of energy known as attention. But from there, it's going to flow across the page, and it's a matter of what do you want it to flow into? Where are you going to guide them? So attention is going to flow, and it's going to come to resting points as well. Now, one particular pattern out there that gives you a general idea of how this can move around is what's called the F pattern. Now, the F pattern is exactly like it sounds. It's the letter F. Now, various eye tracking technologies have been used, and they will literally track the person's eye as they'll go across various websites across the internet, and they have found that generally people's eyes will flow across the site in a pattern which resembles the letter F. So if you envision the letter F and you just write the letter F right across your blog, the first resting point is generally going to be in the top left. Now, the top left is pretty natural. We're used to reading in that direction. We tend to start at the top of the page and we'll scan across to the right side along the top. And that's exactly what most people are going to do when they arrive on your site. They're going to start in the top left, and they're going to scan across the top of the site. Now, generally from there, they're going to scan downward along the left side, and then they'll make another scan typically across the middle portion of the site. Now, generally, how far they scan at that point, or if they do scan at that point, is going to be dependent on what you put there. If you don't put anything there that makes them move across, they're obviously not going to scan. But the general idea here is that they're going to be scanning down the left side of the page. Now, this is why most blogs will have the content on the left side, and they'll have the sidebar on the right side, because you want them to focus on the content primarily. So you put that along the major scan path, which is going to be on the left. Now, if you were in the banner advertising business, you might want to consider, if you've got a right side, you might want to consider putting it on the left side, because it will then put those ads that are in your sidebar in the primary area that people's vision, that people's attention is going to land first, which is going to be on the left side. The downside of that is that, of course, you're putting your content on the right, and they're not going to see it quite as fast. So you really have to make that decision for yourself, whether that makes the most sense. But you put this F pattern on top of your blog, and you can kind of see where people are going to focus on first. The top left is a pretty important piece of real estate on your blog. So what are they going to see at the top left of your site right now? Well, they're probably going to see a logo, maybe some type of a branding image. But when they're on one of your content pages, the primary thing which is going to stand out was going to be the headline of the blog post they're sitting on, or the page that they're sitting on. And that should be actually exactly what pops out. And quite frankly, if your text, if your headline text is not big enough to make it the primary thing that the eye lands on when they go to the top left of your site, then you need to make it bigger, because it should be. Now, from that top left, what are they going to do? They're going to read it. Well, as they read it, they're going to scan across the top. But if they scan all the way over, what should be there, they're landing at the top of the sidebar at that point, right? Well, that should be your lead magnet. Go back to episode 53, where we talked about what should go in the blog sidebar. Well, I said that the lead magnet and the opt-in should be at the very top of the sidebar. That's why. It needs to be above the fold, but it's also because it falls right in line with a typical pathway that people's attention is going to flow across your blog. They're going to land at that point in your sidebar. So if you just go through that, that is, you have to think about where people's attention is going to go. This is how we flow people's attention through a blog design. Now, when you come to those natural resting points inside of your blog, where people's attention is going to come to a rest, where their eyes are going to land on something, those things should be calls to action. The content is generally going to make them flow. They're going to generally read it. They're going to be moving downward, but they're going to come to a resting point. The resting point could be in the middle of the content. And in fact, in some cases it is, because sometimes the person literally won't read the whole darn post. They won't make it to the bottom. Now, if they do make it to the bottom, then obviously the bottom of that post would be a resting point for attention. And you do want to have a call to action at that place. But in the middle of your content is also a good place. You could put a call to action right in the middle of your blog post. It kind of falls right in line with that F pattern, actually. They also scan across the top. Well, what's at the top of your site? That would be a good call to action. I mean, your top navigation is very important, because it falls right along that pathway where they're going to be scanning. So go back to episode 54, where we talked about what should go inside of your blog categories. If you list blog categories in your top navigation, you need to make damn sure that those categories are very benefit driven, because they're going to fall right visually into the person's eye path, and their attention is going to flow across it, and it can act as a resting point, and they might click on that. So let's back all this up. Are you thinking about your blog in this way, or are you just kind of littering things up there based on your capability of doing it? Are you just throwing widgets around because, well, I got one, might as well use it, or just using colors on your site simply because they look good to you? I hope that you're not doing that. I want you to be more strategic about how you set this up. One thing regarding your calls to action, this can help flow people's attention, but also provide a resting point for that attention to get them to click on something. And that is that you should have an action color on your blog. So your blog is going to have certain colors that are they're just part of the groundwork of the site. You know, if you go to Blog Marketing Academy, the primary colors there are going to be lots of white space, a little bit of gray, some black, and a shade of blue. Those are going to be the primary colors of the Blog Marketing Academy. Now, an action color should be a contrasting color that contrasts quite heavily with all that. You'll find on a lot of sites that they use a shade of orange or yellow or gold for call to action buttons. And it's because most people's sites, that color stands out. It stands out very visually. It's easy to notice. And it works in contrast with all the other colors that are on the site. So your action color, you need to determine what that is. And it could be that some type of gold or orange or something like that works out really well. But the big thing about your action color is that you only want to use it on things that you want your visitor to have their attention rest on and ultimately click on. In other words, a call to action. Don't use this thing in other places. You don't want your calls to action to blend in with the general scenery. You want them to stand out. So use an action color for that. I happen to think yellow or orange or something like that works out really well. Some shades of red can work out really well, but you know, red can be taken different ways by different people. But you got to just look at how your blog is put together and look at what the action color should be for you, okay? So all that being said, hopefully you can see there's a lot of strategy that goes into how the blog is set up, for everything from colors to layout to how we move people's attention across that design. If you want to, again, take this to the next level and really tweak every single component of your site and be thinking about it in a strategic way, then I want you to check out my latest action plan over at the Blog Marketing Academy called The Perfect Blog Blueprint. Now, it's a funny title. I mean, I'll be the first to say that there's really no such thing as perfection. I mean, at the end of the day, perfection is unattainable. There's always tests that you could do to probably improve your results. But what I have found, and I've been doing this a really long time, is that there are best practices when it comes to the design of the site in order to increase conversions. And this blueprint is all about how to get your site set up around these best practices. If you want to look at it from an 80-20 perspective, this action plan will get you 80% of the way, no problem at all. And then, you know, if you want to take it a little further and then try to tweak it, then you got to do some testing and things like that to find out what works best for your audience. But this action plan, if you are setting up your blog blindly or just based on what you see other people doing, I want you to get your hands on this action plan so that you can be actually making your own decisions based on something that you know and a system that actually does work. So it's called the Perfect Blog Blueprint. You can check it out over at blogmarketingacademy.com/blog blueprint. Get all that information, okay? With that being said, I want to thank you for listening to another episode of Coffee Break Blogging. We're going to continue on our series about the platform here with episode 56. We're going to be talking about your bounce rate and how to reduce that bad boy down. All right. So I'll see you on the next episode of Coffee Break Blogging. Until then, have a good one.